Go green.
Go green. Yes, go green. Sure. I forgot that last time. Everybody go green, and please try and remember to speak into your mic so live streaming is audible at home. My husband complains every time I go home as well. We're returning to public session, and we have no action pertaining to executive session, so I would like to take motion to recess for the purpose of the public hearing for the Jefferson Code, and I want to apologize to Mrs. Branford. I know you've been waiting to present. So all the
I think that's the proper way to vote for a recess, and then.
okay. All right. All those in favor of a recess for the purpose of the public hearing for the Jefferson Code, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Mrs. Branford. The topic is Kingston High School Jefferson Code.
Okay, the changes that the Jefferson Committee are proposing is a level 2 revision of number 4. The new wording would read, use of and or possession of tobacco, nicotine and or paraphernalia, such as but not limited to an electronic vapor device on school premises or during school-sponsored activities. And that's with, in conjunction with the public health law and district policy. That's the first submission for change. The next is 2 level 3 changes. First being an addition in the range of consequences to incorporate consequences issued by KHS peer court. And then a level 3 revision of offense number 22, the use of electronic devices and or social media that causes a substantial disturbance and or compromises safety, such as but not limited to audio, video, text, photo, and etc. So the first one, the changing, adding the nicotine and or paraphernalia with regard to the possession of tobacco and adding vapor devices in there. Administration asked for the committee to take a look at that because one of the issues that they're finding is having a very hard time applying that to the new use of vapor devices by students at the high school. And mostly they can't test what components are actually in those vapor devices. So we used it sort of tobacco, nicotine, and or paraphernalia to incorporate that a little bit more. And in terms of adding peer court as a potential option for consequences for a level 3, this would still require administration to approve that it goes to peer court. The KHS peer court uses a restorative justice model, so we'd be looking at having students go through the peer court that perhaps maybe have not been successful with other consequences in the past. By going to peer court, the student is admitting their guilt before they can even be seen by the peer court. And then they are sanctioned by the peer court, and then peer court follows up with that to make sure that those sanctions have been followed. If they are not, then it gets kicked back to an administrator, and then the administrator would deal with that at that point. And then in terms of adding social media to level 3, number 22, one of the, obviously, bullying on social media is becoming more and more frequent. And administrators felt as though it needs to, be a little bit more clear because it's not necessarily on the electronic device that the student has with them, but it could be appearing on social media that, they may have posted at home, and then somebody else brings in that complaint regarding that. And then it was at least three of the four constituent groups have approved these changes to be submitted to you today.
Thank you.
Can I make a public comment?
Absolutely, please.
So this is my first year serving as the board liaison to the Jefferson Committee, I was at one meeting, I had a flat tire on my way to the second meeting, and I didn't get there. But these changes were, I think, are in order. They're common sense. They address especially the social media. Well, I'll take them in order. I mean, the social media addresses a situation that 10 years ago, nobody knew about. There wasn't an issue. And I think it needs to be clarified that social media, what appears on social media, is of consequence to the code of conduct. The electronic vapor devices, again, that's, something that's only appeared in the last few years. So I think it's fair to update our policy, the Jefferson Code in that manner. And the peer court, we've been talking at the board level in policy about implementing a restorative justice approach to student conduct, student discipline, and I think that this falls within that range of action that we want to implement.
Anybody else have a comment? I would like to say that just this week, I want to thank you for bringing this forward, but heard a research study done on the increase in the use of e-cigarettes and the lack of regulation on what substances are actually in it. So the use of e-cigarettes is increasing more rapidly than tobacco, use of tobacco. So thank you very much for the update. Anybody else? Yes, I'm sorry.
I have one comment also. Thank you for doing this. I'm also heartened to hear more about the restorative justice process. I hope that someday we can spell it out with specificity and degree that we have focused on this kind of discipline approach, I guess we could say. So, but I'm heartened to see that we're moving more in that direction, or that that's part of what we'll do.
Ms. Shearer? I don't know.
Mrs. Collins?
I'm not sure if this is the proper time, though. Have a question or a concern? Or do we wait until we... If I have a question or a concern...
About
this? Yes.
If there's a concern, I guess it should be a
So
concern
we should
about
wait
it would
until
be
the consent agenda?
in public session.
As
We'll
far as
consider the
policies.
resolution.
But thank you.
Yeah,
Okay.
because we've recessed. Right
That's
now.
what just asking, point of procedure. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, and now I'd like motion to return to the board meeting. Just return.
I guess you just call it back to order.
Okay, I'll call it back to order then. Now, before we, I'm going to take a motion to accept the resolution, then you can discuss it, okay? Motion to accept resolution 2014 BOE 73, policy amendment 5305 of Jefferson.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Mrs. Collins.
I'm just speaking from
Can you speak into the mic?
our last discussion from the policy committee meeting, and I too want to thank Ms. Branford and Mr. Shaughnessy for his service and everybody's hard work that went into this. I think it brings us into current times. You're right, for all the reasons stated. Regarding the last part of the move, the last part of the changes, adding Level 3 can be added to the consequences issued by the KHS Peer Court. I think I just need a clarification, and I know that we had spoken with Mr. Christian, who advises the Peer Court. I have all faith in him. However, I know that it came up at our policy committee meeting. When you look at some of those Level 3 consequences, specifically extortion, threat, bullying, harassment, lewd or sexual behavior, one of the comments was some of these require professional counseling. For a student to have that, in other words, for that to be referred to a peer court, while some of the others were milder. So I would like a clarification of that. I know, Ms. Branford, that you had said that it still requires an administrator, I believe, to recommend that, and we're all about restorative justice, but perhaps you could speak to some of those more substantial behaviors, because that was a concern that arose in our policy committee meeting.
Yes, please.
Thank you.
Mrs. Branford, because she'd be able to answer.
Yes, absolutely. So first, in order for it to go, for a Level 3 to go through peer court, same thing with the Level 2s and Level 1s in which peer court shows up in the consequences already. It's not saying that all of these things that fall under Level 1, Level 2, and Level 3 can go to a peer court. So, for instance, administration assured us that there's no way that they would let the peer court hear, say, a fight. which is under level 3, because that's a much larger issue. So it would be still a narrow scope of what would actually be ending up going to a peer court, after all. So things like what you're mentioning that certainly do need, a little bit more than what maybe peers would be able to give those students, they certainly would not go through the peer court then.
I guess I'm just concerned, would we be liable for that? I don't, just in terms of wording, it seems like any of those could possibly be. I have all faith in the administration to make the right decision, but it still seems open to me as far as the, that sheet, the level of offenses.
Can I make a comment?
Mr. Shaughnessy?
Well, for instance, if you look at the last, number 24 on level 3, it's continuing or repeating level 2 offenses after prior corrective measures have been taken. I mean, that might be an appropriate
A repeat offense.
type level 3 violation that goes to a peer court. It's then dealing with several level 2 offenses taken, by the same person. I mean, maybe that would be, more appropriate than a fight or extortion.
Oh, I fully, we've been talking a lot about restorative justice. It's those ones that I mentioned that concerns me. To have in the same box lewd or sexual behavior on school premises or during school-sponsored activities, to me, it's quite a jump between somebody who's, if it's a repeat of a level 2, insubordination or forgery, and someone forging a note, it seems to be a big jump to me. That's just my opinion. It did come up in our meeting, and I felt that needed to be voiced.
Any other concerns? Okay. All right. Thank you very much. So I'll read the resolution. Whereas the Jefferson Committee has met 2 times to deliberate on a proposed amendment to the Jefferson Code, and whereas the represented constituent groups, should have received and agreed on the proposed amendments, and whereas the legally required public hearing has been held, now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Education to amend the Jefferson Code of Conduct, Policy 5305, by revising Level 2, number 4, offense, use of, and/or possession of tobacco, nicotine, and/or paraphernalia, such as but not limited to electronic vapor device on school premises or during school-sponsored activities, public health law, and district policy reference. Level 3, add in the range of consequences issued by the KHS peer court, and revise number 22 offense, the use of electronic devices and/or social media that causes substantial disturbance and/or compromises safety, such as but not limited to audio, video, text, photo, etc. Okay, all those in favor of that, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. All right, we've now reached the portion of the agenda that involves the principal's welcome. And is Mrs. Linton here? Oh, there you are. Sorry, I didn't see you.
Good evening, and welcome to Bailey Middle School, and especially welcome to Bailey Middle School when it's not 95 degrees outside and sweating inside the auditorium. It doesn't seem possible that almost 2 years ago, we were bringing our 5th graders into the middle schools. And with our 5th graders joining our middle schools, we also implemented a new program, FLEX, Foreign Language Exploratory Program. Tonight, we'd like to take a few moments with Mr. Dexter, affectionately known as Flexter Dexter, to talk to you about our FLEX program. And I do have to mention that we had a social here on Friday evening, mostly 5th and 6th graders. They were asking him enthusiastically and eagerly, what are we doing in class on Monday? So for kids to be asking when they're at school social on a Friday evening, hanging out with their friends, what they're going to be doing in class on Monday, I think that tells you a little bit about how much they really, really enjoy the class. And by the way, the answer was the bullfight. So without further ado, Mr. Flexter Dexter.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mrs. Lynn. I just have a short little presentation sort of about the program that I teach, and I apologize you have to kind of turn around a little bit to see it, but we'll do the best that we can to get through. So I'm going to introduce a little bit what the program is about. I kind of follow the 5th graders to the middle school when they came here. I taught 4th grade the year, and then I kind of followed those students and came with them to Bailey, so it's kind of a big journey for all of us at the same time. So FLEX stands for Foreign Language Exploratory, and I work with groups of 5th grade and 6th grade students, so every single 5th and 6th grader I will see at some point, which means I now know all the students in Kingston. So I thought I'd start today with just sort of an example of the way I start a typical class. I like to, as a history person, I'm a big fan of primary documents and things like that, so I like to start my students every day with a picture of some sort of cultural celebration from around the world, and I have them kind of make observations to see if they can figure out what's going on in that picture, and we kind of talk about how the world is a lot different from what they might be used to here in Kingston, what they see in New York. So this is one I've done already so far this market period. Does anyone know what this is? You might have seen it on TV. It does make it occasionally on there. I actually had a teacher walking by who stopped to listen to my explanation of this one because he saw the picture and was kind of surprised. So anyone know what it is? All right, this is on the island of Vanuatu. It's called land diving, and the men of the tribe, in order to become men or to impress girls or to show off how brave they are or to ensure a good yam harvest, actually tie vines to their ankles. They jump off a 75-foot tower, and the goal is to actually skim the top of their head on the ground. So unlike bungee jumping, which is trying to avoid the ground, their goal is to actually skim the top of their head on the ground, which means you have to make sure your vines are tied absolutely perfectly, are measured absolutely perfectly, otherwise you risk kind of face planting into the ground, which does happen occasionally, although deaths are rare. So this is one of the kind of events I like to make students aware of, just to say, you might come of age by going on your first hunt, or when you get your driver's license. Well, in this part of the world, they jump off of a tower when they turn 12 years old. They start at 25 feet, and that's how they kind of become adults. So, and here's a few facts about it. It's only the men that get to do it. The women are not allowed. Outsiders are not allowed to participate. And deaths are rare, but accidents do happen where the vines snap or where they're a little bit too long. So that's sort of an example lesson of what we might do just at the beginning of class while I take attendance. And our goal for the 5th graders when they take Flex are we want to define culture, talk about what it is and how it affects their lives. We discuss the differences and similarities that students might have working in a place like Kingston. We have students from all over the world. I've had students from Guatemala, from Mexico, from Cameroon, from India, from Russia. So students that speak all sorts of different languages, come from all sorts of different backgrounds. We kind of like to expose them to those things, to those similarities and differences. I like to introduce them to cultural events from around the world that give them a taste that it's kind of a big world out there, and that they get to know a little bit more about what the rest of the world does, how they celebrate things. We intro them to different language. In particular, we do a little bit on Latin and sign language, since their language choices when they get to 7th grade are Spanish and French, which are both Romance languages. I like to start with Latin, kind of show them how they're all related, how they're all very similar. Plus, it helps with English a little bit, too. And then we do an intro to Spanish and French at the very end, just a couple of weeks to kind of get them used to those languages, since they'll have those choices in 7th grade. And then because they do the Maya, Aztecs, Incas in their 5th grade social studies, we touch on those too and get to show them kind of some of the cool things that happen in those places. In fact, Mrs. Linton let me borrow some pictures from Chichen Itza, which is a very, very cool pyramid in Mexico, and they have a ball court there where they used to play this amazing ball game, and I got to show those to the students and talk to them about it. So it just kind of supplements what they do in 5th grade social studies. And then I like to do a lot of nonfiction articles, kind of get those reading skills built up a little bit. And then the activities are those do nows. I do a language of the week, so I might do German one week, Portuguese, Irish, Gaelic. Just give them some basics in other languages, which they kind of like. So I have students now greeting me in German this week. Stories from the Peace Corps, so people who have lived in other cultures, a lot of nonfiction reading. Articles from student magazines or Scholastic Newses, and then I like to have them do comic strips once we actually get into the language so they can practice writing in those languages, and then skits so they actually practice speaking to one another so they get some actual speaking practice. The best way to learn a language is to speak it. And then here are just some of the examples of some of the things that we cover. We have Holi in India, the baby jumping festival in Spain where they actually jump over babies, the catacombs in Paris, the 6 million buried Parisians are underneath the city, underneath the Eiffel Tower, in fact. And then the bottom right corner is the ball court at Chichen Itza, where many people were sacrificed following the game. So that's something students always like to talk about. And this all leads way to our sixth grade program. This is the first year we've actually done the sixth grade program. Last year, fifth and sixth were the same. This year, we kind of wrote a whole new curriculum for the year. And our sixth grade goals, we continue the work from the previous year. We have a focus on Spanish and French. Since those are the languages they are able to take in seventh grade, we focus on teaching them the beginnings of those and help them get familiar with them so that they know what language they want to take. They can say, well, I really enjoyed when we did French, I want to continue that, or I like Spanish better, I want to continue with that. One of the primary goals is help them know where they're going to be more comfortable the following year. They're not going to come out speaking fluently from me, because I don't speak either fluently, but they're going to come out with a basic knowledge. So when they get to Spanish and French, they've already heard some of the words. We also work on reading skills. I always do a couple of persuasive writing pieces. One is about bullfighting, and the other is about school lunch, where they compare the Bailey school lunch to the French school lunch. They see how things are similar and different, which is always interesting to see how the French do things. So some of the activities they do, I show a lot of video clips so they can kind of see what things actually look like. Again, skits and speaking practice, they get a little more involved this time. I play Simon Disse and Jacques Diet, which are Simon Says, so they can practice hearing classroom commands. Comic strips once again, and then my persuasive writing pieces, and I have some samples of those. Those show some of the school lunch comparisons that they've done, as well as two of the comic strips. One of them's in Latin, and the other one is in Spanish. So just give you an idea of some of the work that students are doing in the Flex program. And that pretty much sums up what Flex is all about. Hopefully we can continue kind of going forward, helping it improve a little bit. It's gotten, I think, a lot better this year as time's gone on. So thank you very much. I appreciate the time to listen to the program, and everyone have a great night.
Any questions for Mr. Dexter? Yes.
This isn't really a question, it's more of a comment. You know, I now have a sixth grader who's actually been through your class, as you know, and he just loves it. And when he had you first quarter, I think, and just has been complaining the whole rest of the year about how he will never have you again. So I know it's been a successful program, and they really love the curriculum, and it's been a great addition, I think.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr.
I'd like to come and see. I'd like to come and see it. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, we now have reached that portion of the agenda that allows for public participation. Please approach the podium, and I don't know if there's a mic up there, but if there is, please speak into the mic. Oh, yes, Mr. Vellum has a mic for you, so that the people listening to the live stream at home can hear it. You're limited to 2 minutes. Mr. Perna, our board clerk, will let you know when you're approaching the 2 minutes. It's not a conversation. But please. Mrs. Bowers. Someone's before you? Okay. Do you want to hand the sign-up sheet? Well, so we know who signed up.
Is this on?
Yes.
Hello. I am here today as a concerned parent with hopes that I can help prevent other parents and children from experiencing the disappointment and frustration that I felt regarding a field trip at Miller Middle School last Friday. It seems there was a communication breakdown when it came to informing parents of the volunteer policy. First of all, many of us have attended other field trips this year and were not aware that it was a problem. And also, we were not notified that we had to fill out a volunteer application until a few weeks before the trip. We were told 3 days before the trip that we had not been approved by the board to attend the trip, so we could not go, even though we had already paid our money and our children were thinking we were going with them. So the biggest problem here is that none of the parents were notified they needed to do the application, and they were not notified, certainly, that it had to be approved by the board, and that the board agenda would not include approval of volunteer applications until April 22nd. At the very least, there needs to be some more staff training regarding this policy. The other part of this situation is the impact on the parents and children who are involved. The parents and children were heartbroken. This is about more than following policy, protocol, and regulations. This is about relationships, trust, and being good role models. Being a good role model means going above and beyond what is expected. It means being accountable, treating others with respect, and validating each other even when we disagree. The board could have made the decision to hold a special meeting in light of the complicated situation. However, they chose not to do that. This left the parents and the children feeling invalidated and unimportant. I am sure that you all care very much about the students and parents of our school district. Unfortunately, that mission was not conveyed in this situation. I hope it will be blazingly conveyed in the future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Diana Custer.
I'm continuing to ask the board and the administration for increased communication and transparency in the budget process for next year. Since this year, we didn't find out until 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago that we were having the opportunity to get an influx of $5 million. There was a surplus above having everything be exactly the same, and I know that our governor and our legislators and assemblymen are working very hard to keep the taxes, not only in Kingston, New York, but throughout the entire state below 2.5%. I know that you as a board right now feel it's necessary to have it be at 1.25%. But I'm very, very concerned because our school district is a school district in need of improvement. There are 10 schools that have school improvement plans and building leadership teams that are comprised of parents, teachers, administrators, and the list is long. I have not looked at all 10 schools, but I recommend that the board spend a lot more time next year looking at the hard work that those committees do. There are lots of recommendations. We have amazing teachers and administrators in this district. And I believe that you are being short-sighted this year there are people for 5 years since the gap elimination adjustment has been in place. $31 million has been borrowed from the children of Kingston City School District. I see this $5 million as money that is being given back to the school to help there not be lack of equity within our district or lack of equity within our county or within our region. I want to bring to your attention that any line item here that is above 1.25%, especially ones that are over 10%, that you look harder. Because I do believe the programs, I do believe the teachers who have been cut, the staff that's been cut over the last years, the 100 people that have not been replaced. I know you said there's change. I can tell you, with the 5 kids that I'm raising with my husband and the 5 children I helped before, that there are things that have been lost.
Thank you, Mrs. Kester.
Please reconsider.
Thank you,
We could
Mrs.
have a
Kester.
second budget.
Mrs. Saffron.
Good evening. Confusion and misinformation abounds regarding a parent's right to refuse the New York State test and possible consequences to students, teachers, schools, should parents, and specifically too many parents, more than 5% of the parents in a school district, refuse the test. For those who read my blog or follow me on Facebook, you know that I have been sharing a lot of information and spending time writing about these topics to help keep parents informed about this information. Since administrators and school board members are seriously limited in what you can say and what you can do because you're required by law to administer the tests, and we've been hearing threats that there are administrators might be punished, board members, if there's any attempts to encourage test refusals. I understand that you have to be very careful in what you say. However, that then also means that it falls upon parents to convey the information to other parents. Therefore, I take very seriously a serious issue with actions and words from those in authority that come across as threats or intimidation and are perceived by parents as attempts to coerce them to take the test when parents want to refuse. I believe that such action was undertaken by the New York State School Boards Association in a communication entitled Managing State Assessment Opt-outs. This was communicated to the Board of Education in Kingston and then on to parents through the district-wide parent council. The information in this communication was presented as facts from NISBA, yet NYSAPE, New York State Allies for Public Education, has already repeated the information. If NISBA was desirous of advising the Board of Education on how to truly act as the public servants to which you have been elected, and they were truly concerned about the information that NYSAPE has recorded and perhaps it being incorrect, NISBA could have presented both sides of the issues and advised school board of the differing opinions and allowed the school board members to make their own informed decisions about what is best for your community. This doesn't seem to be the desire of NISBA and Executive Director, Mr. Kramer, based on how he responded to my email about this.
Thank you, Mrs. Sutton.
Oh, I apologize. So I'd ask you to please consider your involvement with NISBA and as you consider budgets today. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Bowers.
Thank you.
It is on, okay, thank you, sorry. My name is Maureen Bowers. I just wanted to comment about the weekend that we just had, and echo Mrs. Studing's comments in the newspaper today. She wrote a very nice letter, and I don't think we can say enough about what a wonderful weekend it was. It brought back a lot of memories for those who went to Kingston High School, who lived in this community for a long time, maybe didn't go to the school. A lot of, in my volunteerism at the event over the weekend, I saw a lot of people reconnect with each other, and that was great to see. I saw tears, I saw the happy faces, and it was just a really, really wonderful event. The choir, I think it's such a tribute to a community and a district when you can see that many people, alumni, join together again in song and spirit. And I just wanted to publicly congratulate Mrs. Shearer and acknowledge, they're not here, but Leslie Carr and Anna Brett on a job really, really well done. And I think that it really does look to our past, but in looking to our past, I think we're really going to look to a great future with the groundbreaking that took place and the improvements to the school that we're going to see in the next few years. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Bowers.
Just leave it on.
Okay, anyone else who'd like to address the board? Yes.
Hello, thank you. My name is Barbara Stemke, and I live in Kingston. I pay taxes in Kingston. I voted for school board members in the last election, and I will vote again in the next election. And I have spent quite a bit of time this past winter and early spring fighting to get full funding for all the local schools, all public schools in New York State. I have been fighting Governor Cuomo's budget to raise the amount of funding for public schools. And I now ask you to consider, with the windfall funds that have come to Kingston, very nice, that every penny should go for the education of the students. Yes, taxpayers are in a pinch, but the students are in a bigger pinch. The students need the money. Please give all the windfall money to the schools that need additional resources, additional teachers, services, anything to help the students. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else who would like to address the board? Okay, hearing no one, I'm going to turn the meeting over to Dr. Catalino for the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I also want to just briefly talk about this weekend. What a great turnout we had. There were more than 1,000 people that came through the campus at Kingston High School, people to look back at and how it was when they were there, or even before they were there, and then also to look to the future. And the most impressive thing, I think, maybe of the day was the number of people in that alumni choir. That was to get people from all over the country, and I think I met two graduates, one from the class of 1933 and one from the class of 1935, which was an honor to meet them, and I was really very impressed that the gentleman from the class of 1935 was walking back from the bar with a martini at the gala. I do want to thank Anna Brett, Leslie Carr, and Nora Shear for their really taking this on, and it was a lot of work. There were 2 times this year that I thought we really had the makings of a nightmare, and the first was the opening parade, which Mr. Shear had to have, and I will admit now, I was dead set against. But it went off without a hitch. We had beautiful weather, and thousands of people showed up in the front lawn of Kingston High School. And this was the other one that I was very concerned about. But Ms. Carr, Ms. Shearer, and Mrs. Brett made sure that it came off without a hitch. I do want to thank Kirk Reinhardt, our high school principal, who also was very invested in this and really was sweating it out for the week before to make sure we were ready, as well as Kate Heidecker, who did a lot of the printing and publishing and writing and all those things, and a lot of the pictures that are on the website, or all the pictures that are on the website, and from that event. So it was a very nice event, and I thank you, Ms. Shear. So. Yeah, you don't have to do it again for 100 years, and I won't be the superintendent then, so. No more parades.
I actually didn't do more than light a spark, and the co-chairs took off and organized a group of close to 200 people who helped with getting the event together. So it was wonderful. It was delightful to do it. And a lot of people in the community who volunteered. And we'll get to that later in the resolution.
Okay. The only other thing I have on the superintendent's report for tonight is the topic of the budget. All of you have received the budget that I have sent out with the proposal for the board's consideration. And we have it on the total spending on as of B111 is the agenda item that the board will be voting on. We have a proposed spending of $156,479,931. Our tax levy for this year, the proposal is 1.25, which is again, we know our tax levy limit is 2.5, but the 1.25 was the recommendation that we were making to the board. With those additions, again, there was still obviously an increase for our aid, and with that aid, we had spent some time looking at what we wanted to have, what we wanted to recommend, and we also had some, obviously many forums, and another forum or conversation last Monday as well with the community, and the recommendations that were outlined for you in the board packet, and these are for to firm up our special education inclusion model, which is what we talked about, which is the inclusion of 3 new teachers in the special ed department. Again, that's shoring up that special ed, that least restrictive environment program that we started 2 years ago, and again, we're analyzing as we go, and one of the recommendations was that be the place where we make an addition. Also, the priority of many people, including the Board of Education, was the stabilization of our class size at K through 2. We're recommending we add 3 new elementary teachers at that level to accomplish that goal. We're recommending for the high school music program that there be money put in for the equipment for a new music program, a music tech program. We're also requesting the board consider adding 2 social work positions at the elementary and high school levels, 1 psychologist position at the high school level. One of the areas that I put in the memo that I sent to you, but really it's kind of a shift in funding, isn't necessarily in this budget, but I wanted to make sure you knew that we were addressing this concern, is an addition of an AIS math teacher. We found a way to put that into federal funds, but that will be added as well this year. The last thing is the new box truck for our maintenance. I misspoke last time I talked about it being a lunch truck, because I thought that's what it was, and Mr. Olson and I had a miscommunication on that, but it's not it's a box truck for our maintenance crew. Our old box truck has rusted out, so this is a new one for them. And those are the areas of priority that we made recommendations for.
Questions? Dr. Jacobo.
I'm sorry, can I just quickly?
Absolutely.
That's $693,712 total as far as the spending.
tell us a little bit more about where you will place these social workers, the elementary school social workers?
Well, we're going to actually, now we'll have 13 social workers. Okay, so we'll have 13 social workers. We want to make sure that we have, we'll take them all and put them kind of in a pool and decide where we put them. Actually, that'll put us mostly with each building having their own social worker.
Because that was my question. One of the things in the transition that we had really talked about was having one social worker per building. And so I was wondering if this gets us there.
This gets us most of the way there. And again, we want to be considerate of the needs in the buildings. So we want to make sure we have the services, but we also want to make sure we're efficient. So if we have a building where the need for the social worker services is not as great, we don't want to have a social worker there when we can maybe move them somewhere else, maybe part-time at the middle school or something of that nature. So we're close to that one per. And again, I know it sounds, it sounds great that there'd be one dedicated person to every building in every one of these categories. But A, sometimes it's not very efficient, and B, sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's good to be able to share people with buildings and have them work in different areas and with different students. So.
Squito.
Piggybacking on that is a question of where you see, I know you want to commit to a strong commitment, where you see the extra elementary teachers going, as well as the addition of the special ed teachers. Is there?
Well, that's one of the things that it's kind of a mystery. I mean, we're doing our projections as far as, we still don't know about our kindergarten registration. Last year we had a kind of an odd time with kindergarten registration. We made changes to our special permissions policy, which we think will help us with predicting and with keeping our class sizes even across the district. We figured that if we wanted to keep where we were or better, that the addition of three teachers would do that for us. Right now, as I showed the other night, our class size averages are 21, 22, kindergarten 1 and 2. We'd like to be a little lower than that, but we want to at least be consistent there. Now, we had some 25s and 27s, and those are the ones those are the areas where we want to put someone. We already know we have a situation at Graves we have to take care of. So I could probably say one of them is going to end up in Graves. So that's but we may end up with a low enrollment in kindergarten in one of the schools, and then so there'll be some shuffling.
And the special ed teachers, are you seeing them as full-time or also floaters?
We're seeing them as full-time to help with the co-teaching model.
And so then those teachers will go where there's need also once we have established classes.
Correct.
Once everything's all settled.
Right.
Okay. So
once we have our meetings done, we know where our students' IEPs will be. That's how we'll break up the classrooms.
Right. So is that, because I imagine we're serving a need right now, so are you imagining there's going to be more of a need, or is this is about more support?
This is about more support. This is about more support. We don't see the need growing, but we will be able to provide more support, more of the real co-teaching model that we're trying to have. Right now we have what we have is better than what we had, but we're not at best practice yet. We're trying to move toward that.
So we're trying to move towards co-teaching for everybody?
Co-teaching in our inclusion model classes, yes.
Okay, because right now at the elementary schools, it's mostly a consultant model. And so the hope is to move more co-teaching.
More to co-teaching.
So this is kind of an unrelated question, but last time we went through the budget like line by line, so I'm not really interested in doing that again because that would be duplicative. But one thing I can't remember if we discussed was our participation in PTEC. And what that will look like going forward.
We're going to continue to participate in PTEC the same way we did with the same commitment we had this year.
Okay, so, and we have 17 this year?
We have 12.
12. Okay, so we'll do another 12?
Correct.
Okay.
Any questions? Mr. Shaughnessy.
I'd like to make a couple comments. One is to address the question or the comments that we should have put all of the increase funding that we got to student programs. In fact, I think the vast majority of the increase went to student programs. And the reason I say that is because it eliminated reductions that we would have had to make if we hadn't gotten that increase. If I'm not, is that a fair assumption, Dr. Padalino?
Yes.
And then it was another $900,000 in addition to that. And the reduction in the tax levy was about a little less than 1.25%, and that translates into about $1 million of what it would have been at 2.52%. So 80% of the increase in state aid of $5 million, in fact, did go to student program. I think as board members, we serve two masters. We're concerned about the students, but we have to take into account the ability of our community to support the schools with property taxes. And, we don't know what's going to happen next year, but down the road, as our bonding requirements increase, we're going to have significant increases in our allowable tax levy increase is not going to be 2% anymore. It's going to be, you want to say the number?
It's going to be high.
It's going to be high. So, giving the taxpayers a little bit of a break now in anticipation of the burden that they're going to face in the future, I think is a valid choice for us to make at this time. So the second comment is in addition to the classrooms, the addition of using that funding for more teachers and more special ed teachers and more K-2 teachers. I also appreciate the addition of an AIS math teacher and also the psychologists and social workers, because it means we're also addressing the social and emotional health of our students as well as their academic requirements. And Reverend Childs is his famous saying that children don't care what you know until they know that you care. That's a social emotional issue that I think the social workers and psychologists will help to address. And the third, I guess the choir, if they go to Carnegie Hall next year, they'll be going in their the robes that they have now.
We've found a way to finance that through this year's budget.
Oh.
So Mr. Lohman is getting his order together, and we will have it in before the end of this fiscal year, so it will stay in this budget. So they'll be getting their robes.
Very nice, thank you. I'm sure our student singers will appreciate that.
Yes, Mr. Lohman was very pleased.
Thank you.
Mrs. Collins and then Dr. Shkovich.
I just wanted to piggyback on a couple of the comments that Mr. Shaughnessy made in agreement with a lot of what he said. And I wanted to just first of all say to Dr. Padalino and the staff that helped craft this budget, I think it's very responsible. On Monday, we had the final budget forum. I know that not a lot of people could attend, but with that new information, given that and the fact that at the last budget meeting, you came to us, the board, and asked us what kind of initiatives we wanted to support. And I think the feeling was that we were going to defer to the experts, to you, and the people we put into place because we have that level of trust. And I do agree, Mr. Shaughnessy, I think that we're being fiscally responsible and still trying to best meet the needs of our students. And to take that to another level, when I think about it, in this community, I think that with a lot of people really being strapped, doing without a lot of basic needs, we see this in our schools, we see this in our students, some people it might be living paycheck to paycheck, that directly translates into quality of life for students and how they're going to progress as well. So I think we have to be fiscally responsible as far as looking at the tax levy. I'm very proud that we were able to do that. I thank you once again, Dr. Padalino and your staff. But I also am very glad to see that we're going to have those extra supports in place for the students who are going to need it. Dr. Padalino said at the last budget forum, that we, not myself, but the prior board and administration, Dr. Padalino, did the tough work with closing schools, making tough decisions. And so now we are in this position to have the windfall, and I think we're being responsible and responsive.
Thank you. Dr. Chipola.
I would agree with what both of my colleagues have just said. I think this is a responsible budget. I really appreciate the hard work that went into it. I'm particularly heartened by the support for early education and the addition of new teachers there, and additional support for our students with special needs and social workers and psychologists and AIS workers. I think those are top priorities, and those are the kinds of supports that we need for our students to be able to reach their full potential, and I appreciate that is really where the focus is in this budget.
Reverend Childs.
Yes, I certainly concur with our board members that have spoken so far. I think that we have to understand, too, that we did take in consideration the suggestions that were made by many people who did come to the budget hearing about class size, about improving the elementary teachers that we could have that could make the classes even better, and et cetera. And so I agree with all that has said, and I agree with this budget in that I really feel that we've taken into consideration not only our students, first of all, but secondly, that we also have taken into consideration the taxpayers and what they are able to do. One of the things that I like in this budget, along with many other things, but we didn't talk much about it, and that is the music. We've had some of our young people who are involved in music outside of the school, and they do a lot of things. And with this technology and music that's coming, I think it's going to draw a lot of our young people to be involved in school and using the technology that's there. Because it's amazing the things that they've been doing outside, but not having the ability in school to do it. So I think that's going to add on a sense of involvement again for a greater number of children.
I'd also like to say that I think that the Audit and Finance Committee went to the superintendent early this year and asked that we have more budget forms than usual, and we did. It was an unusual year because, as you know, the governor wouldn't tell us what kind of state aid runs we would have until very recently. And so it was rather strange. We just had an estimated budget with 0% increase because we couldn't really count on anything else. I do want to thank them for the job they did in updating things so rapidly as they came along. I also want to say that parents did have input via the district-wide parent council. Everything that was voiced at the meeting, and Mrs. Lau and I were there at the April 9th meeting, went back to the district, and much of it was incorporated. Not all, but, in an ideal world. But I do want to thank them for the job that they did. They did a wonderful job. I think they were very responsive and available to the public. I know that there's always criticism that we didn't have enough information. We didn't have it that far in advance, but I think you had as much as we could give you as we were moving forward through that. So I do want to thank you for being that responsive to the community and scheduling extra budget forums. I hope more people come out next year. Okay. Any other questions on the budget? Yes.
I would suggest, though, that next year, if we can get to the public the information that we've got sooner, so they've got it and can look line item by line item, and to see it that way, it would be beneficial, I think, to everybody.
We'll try.
Well, one of my goals is always to not put things out too far in advance of when I give them to you. So my responsibility is to get you that information first. I don't want you to be the second to know. So usually as soon as we get for example, as soon as I got those packets out last week, that's when we started working on getting the line by line out for everyone else. So it's that tricky balance that I play, trying not to upset any of the 9 people up here.
Any other questions or comments? Okay. Hearing none, move on to the approval of the minutes for March 25th and April 8th. They were both in your packet. I'm sorry, April 8th was emailed yesterday. I'm corrected by Mrs. Perna. You should have received it.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Any amendments, corrections? All right, all those in favor of the minutes of March 25th and April 8th, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. All right, before we go into the resolution, the resolutions and the consent agenda, I have one correction that didn't make it to the web.
It is on the web already.
Oh, it's on the web already, but board members may have in their possession a copy of the agenda without it. It's P-138, professional personnel volunteers. Would you please add Mrs. Cheryl Hobart, CHERYLHOBART, to that resolution? Okay, now entertain, I should ask you first, is there anything that you would like removed from the consent agenda, pulled from the consent agenda? Any resolutions?
P-138.
P-138.
P-138, and BOE 77.
BOE 77. Any others?
BOE 109, I'm sorry, B109.
That's right. B109. Any others? Okay. I entertain a motion to accept the consent agenda minus B109, BOE 77, and P138.
So moved.
All those in favor of the consent agenda minus those resolutions, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, so take B109. I entertain a motion to accept B109.
So moved. Second.
Okay, discussion. Yes.
I just wanted to know, what is Truth Club? I looked at the Thirst Club, but I couldn't find what is Truth, and I'm just curious what it is.
Mr. Shaughnessy, do you want to answer that? It says was approved by Audit and Finance. What is Truth Club? Do you recall?
We have what is Truth Club.
I don't it's, I'll ask Mr. Verge or Mr. Olson to answer that. So I do.
It's a club here at the J. Watson Bailey Middle School. It's a philosophy club. So they pose philosophical questions, there's discussion, they invite guest speakers in.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I didn't want to misrepresent what it was. I remember discussing it, but I wasn't.
Okay, thank you. I don't want to put you on the spot. All right, all those in favor of B109, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, moving on to the next one, which is, we're waiting on a page or something. Which one? BOE 77. BOE 77, I'll entertain a motion to accept BOE 77. Motion? Second? Okay, discussion. BOE 77. Yes, Mr. Shaughnessy.
BOE 77 is amending the resolution for the sale of Xena. It's, in my opinion, it's significantly changed in two respects. Number one, it's a different entity that we are proposing to sell it to now. And I'm told that it's the same principles, but my experience has always been it's not really always possible to know who's behind a corporate entity. But be that as it may, the original contract called for a closing on or before September 1st of 2014. Then on January 22nd of 2015, I think it was BOE 44, the resolution was to extend it by
3 months and requiring them to close by April 21st, which was yesterday. And now this amendment doesn't have any closing date on it. We were told, I think you have a closing date?
Yes.
And that closing date is?
27th of April.
27th of April. What is the consequence if they miss it?
I mean, the board could then decide not to sell the building and would forfeit their deposit.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments? Ms. Cleveland?
I empathize with Mr. Shaughnessy's sentiment about the duration of time that's spent on it, but as a lifelong member of the community of Xena, it's very sad to drive past the elementary school and see it just sitting unused and empty, and I'm very happy that there's hope that it will be used and it can hopefully help not just with with our financial situation, but also help revive that community that has really suffered a lot since the movement of IBM. So I hope that we do indeed close on Monday and the building can move forward to a new purpose.
Any other questions or comments? All right, all those in favor of BOE 77, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
No.
Abstentions? Motion carries. Entertain a motion for P-138.
So moved.
Second? Second. Thank you. Discussion. Mr. Shaughnessy.
We had a member of the public make a public comment about a mix-up at Miller School, where she wasn't the only parent who wasn't able to go on the field trip last Friday. There were several others. I don't know who they are on this list, but it wasn't their fault that they submitted their applications when they were given them over the weekend. And it was an unfortunate circumstance, partially caused by the school vacation, that the applications didn't make it to the board in time for approval, and the parents weren't able to go. We've approved, by my count, over 900 volunteers since this policy was adopted in March of 2014. So those are 900 level 2 and level 3 volunteers that were approved. The board has never looked at a single application of any of those volunteers. And also this is a formality, but these resolutions have been the only professional resolutions that don't come based on the recommendation of the superintendent. So I think that's something that's perhaps should be added in the future to these resolutions, because that is a standard. We make personnel decisions based on the recommendation of the superintendent, and not just on the fact that we're told that an application has been filled out. And I also would ask that the policy committee look at amending the volunteer policy to grant the superintendent the authority to make emergency approvals, or that an exception if a parent is attending a field trip with their, a parent or guardian is accompanying one of their children on a field trip, that be treated as a level 1, as a level 1 application, which wouldn't require board approval. It would be a one-time, a one-time approval. So and we're finishing the first year of the full application of this policy, and so I think we should, over the summer, take a look at it in policy and see if there are any adjustments that are warranted.
Well, and I'd like to say that would be the appropriate place to look at it, in policy and in regulation. We can do it in policy. Okay. All those in favor of P138? Aye. Please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay. Motion carries. Now, there were several donations. I don't know, Ms. Collins, if you're ready. There's one that I'd like to do, B115, if you don't mind. We have B104 through 106.
Sure. Okay, we'll try to do this quickly.
We'd like to acknowledge.
It looks like starting with B103, there are a couple from Meyer Elementary School. The Kingston City School District is the recipient of a generous donation from E.C. Meyer PTA in the amount of $665. So that looks like it's just going to go back to be appropriated, right, in a certain account. B104, Meyer Elementary School is the recipient of a generous donation from the, I wonder if that should be Gill family. Is it Gill Fam? Gill Fam Management Corporation of $280, just thinking of the Gill family of Hurley, since Meyer's in Hurley. But it's going to be used for a trip to the Liberty Science Center. John F. Kennedy Elementary School is the recipient of a generous donation from the Stewart's Foundation in the amount of $500. And Harry L. Edson Elementary School is the recipient of a generous grant award from the Teaching the Hudson Valley Explore Award in the amount of $1,450 to be used for the field trip to the Sharp Reservation. And I believe that's you, Mrs. Shearer.
Yeah, I missed 103, if you want to. 103, a donation to Meyer Elementary School.
Yes, I did that.
Okay, thank you.
There were two to Meyer, yes.
Thank you very much. Okay, B113, the reason I asked to do this is, these are people that I got to work with in the KHS 100. We're accepting a donation from the county historian, Mr. Edwin Ford, and his brother, Mr. William Ford, who, for the purpose of the KHS 100th anniversary, took their own funds and their own store of historical photos to prepare a calendar that's absolutely beautiful, with historic photographs and photographs of the high school and high school students and happenings. So it is absolutely gorgeous. And that was their generous donation to the district for the 100th anniversary. So I do want to thank the Fords for that. They worked hard on that. How many? Oh, they actually donated 1,500 copies to the district. Many of them were handed out already. We're trying to reserve some for the graduating class. So anybody who attended on Saturday went home with one of these. And it's beautiful. So thank you to the Fords. Okay. All right. So that's the end of the consent agenda? No. Yes? And we've come to the portion, yes, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I just wanted to mention in civil service, CS 25.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead. I see Mr. James Havering is here this evening, and he's retiring. I've worked with him for many years, and congratulations to him.
Anything else?
No, sorry.
And thank you very much for catching that. No one should ever retire without being acknowledged for their years of service. Thank you. And that marks the end of the consent agenda. And we're on to the portion of the meeting that the Board of Education Policy Committee We have Mrs. Collins.
Tonight, we have a first reading of policy 4326, which is a NYSBA policy. It's programs for English language learners. This has been discussed at our policy committee meeting. We've also asked it to be reviewed. Mr. Burge suggested that both Mrs. Gibbons and Ms. Bonneville review it, and we are putting it up for the first reading as is, feeling comfortable with it. There are exhibits that are attached are just that. They are not part of the policy. They were with the file. So we're just really looking at that first reading of this policy this evening. And secondly, I guess I can move BOE 74, because we have a policy adoption as well. Shall I read it? Is that okay?
Go ahead.
Whereas the Kingston City School District has contracted with NYSBA as consultants to the Board of Education for the review, amendment, and adoption of its policy manual, and whereas a subcommittee of the Board in consultation with NYSBA and legal counsel have prepared the following policies for the Board for amendment and/or adoption. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Education adopt the following new amended policy, 5420, Student Health Services. And that's attached as well.
I'll entertain a motion.
I moved it.
Second.
Any discussion about it? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
And lastly, our next meeting is going to be May 8th. The agenda will be forthcoming because we normally meet on May Day, but we're going to be participating in those festivities.
Thank you very much. And Audit and Finance. Mr. Shaughnessy.
The Audit and Finance Committee met on March 24th. We reviewed the Claims Auditor's report for February 2015, and that's included BOE 75. We recommend the acceptance of the Claims Auditor report for February 2015. Make that motion. So moved.
Okay. Okay. All those in favor of accepting the Claims Auditor report?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. And BOE 76?
BOE 76, I'll move that. It's the acceptance of the Treasurer's reports for February 2015 as attached.
All those in favor of accepting the Treasurer's report, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, and on to Facilities Committee. Facilities Committee met on April 15th, just after the steering committee met again. You received the steering committee minutes in your packet because that dealt with some deadlines and some proposed movement with the project at KHS. The Facilities Committee minutes from February 11th were amended, and Mrs. Perna has not had an opportunity yet to type them, but they will be available quite soon, and we'll put them on the next agenda. Basically, what happened at the Facilities Committee was we had a discussion. The Facilities Committee members were upset because they were afraid the public may have the impression that they knew about any changes to the parameters of the project prior to the public knowing, and they did not. And the amendment to the minutes reflects that they did not. The steering committee, as the minutes reflected, did not know about changes to parameters and the full scope and the phasing of the KHS Second Century project until February 25th, and then it was presented shortly thereafter to the board after some clarifications and opportunity for the architects and the construction management firm to work on the phasing, which is available online on the district website, as are the steering committee minutes. I want to encourage you to read them. They're up there every time we have a steering committee meeting. And our next facilities committee meeting is on June, it's the second, yeah, June 10th? On June 10th. At that meeting, the building conditions reports for this year for all the principals' concerns will be available to for the committee to review, and then shortly thereafter they'll be up on the web. And I do want to say thank you to the maintenance staff. They've done a wonderful job. They've cooperated fully with the building inspections, and if you do take a look at the reports, you can see that they're actually accomplishing a great deal of the work that's been requested by the principals and the head custodians. So I do want to say thank you to them. And we're on to old business. Any old business that any board member would like to bring up at this point?
Well, I guess it's old business now. I mean, I thought that I heard when we were pulling resolutions B111, which was the budget, but we didn't vote on that separately. But I just want the public to know that we have approved for presentation on May 19th the budget authorizing the expenditure of $156,479,931, and whatever tax levy is necessary to support that.
Was part of the consent agenda.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah,
I thought I heard someone pull it, but it wasn't. I don't think we voted.
Yeah, no one asked. I'm sorry.
But it was approved already. I just wanted.
Oh, yes, it was. Old business? New business? Oh, I have some new business. We have actually been asked, and I brought with me a prototype. There are going to be weekly, I'll get it out, weekly ads placed by KTF and ESP jointly, asking for support for public education, more local control. I have it here someplace. Where is it? In my pack? Where? It's blue. I believe they've planned on starting with the ads this Sunday. They've approached a lot of local business people and organizations to support. We got to find it. I'm sorry. This is what happens when you don't use your tablet and you have 10 pages of stuff. I know. I do have it. The basic, there it is. There it is, and I'll pass it out this way and this way. But so the public can hear the proposal. This is the prototype for the ad. It should begin showing in the Sunday papers either this week or next. So support public education. Public schools build strong communities. Public schools help localities become economically competitive. Public schools influence property values. Quality, size, and shape of school facilities affect economic development. Public schools build a stronger, more productive future. So they're asking for support. It says, we are your neighbors, we're your Little League coaches, we're responsive community members, we're supporters of local food pantries. It's being sponsored by KTF and ESP. There's no cost to the district. So I would like to move that the board support this ad campaign in support of public education. So we need a second.
Second.
And discussion. No discussion?
Well,
yes, Mr. Shaughnessy.
I just want to be clear, we're not advocating, this doesn't advocate the approval of the budget, which we're not allowed to do.
No,
It just advocates support of public education, which I think we are allowed to do.
Yeah, no, just supports public education and support of teachers and students. Yes, Dr. Chipotle.
I'm happy and proud to put our name to something that supports our teachers and our students and public education in general.
Thank you. Yes.
And definitely, I approve of it. I think that without public education, I don't know where we would be. It is what has changed this country, changed this nation, and I think that we need to be the support of public education.
Thank you very much. Any other comments? Questions? Okay, all those in favor of the motion to sign on to supporting public education, not the budget, this public education in general and more local control, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, motion carries. Another little piece of new business is the KHS 100. I guess now it's old business because it actually took place last weekend. But I do want to publicly thank, and soon we'll actually send a thank you in writing, to all of the hundreds of people who participated, but most especially to the co-chairs, Ms. Leslie Carr and Mrs. Anna Brett, who were both veterans of Kingston City School District, who both retired, who came out of retirement to do a fantastic job of pulling together all sorts of resources and archives, did research, worked tirelessly, and anybody who visited the exhibits, the Decades Rooms, and saw the program that they put together with the alumni choir, which continued in the evening with the alumni jazz ensembles. Fantastic music. And this was people coming from all over the place. And Dr. Paolino's right. We had the oldest graduate we had, alumni we had, was a graduate of 100 years old from the class of 1933. And we had lots of people sign in guest books. I'm actually assembling that and typing it up so you can see who showed up from what class. But it was a wonderful event. The art department did a great job with their cyanotype, which I think should be stretched and framed and hung someplace in the school. It's beautiful. There's a banner developed using sunlight and chemicals that used historical photographs and actual student work, and it was very impressive. We also had a ceremonial groundbreaking, and I agree, the choir was heavenly. So I do want to thank everybody who took part in that and who came. Thanks to the community. Any other new business? Yes.
Well, I'll just piggyback on that and say I participated this past weekend, and it was so fun and just a wonderful event, and I felt I was very proud to be able to be a part of a celebration of such a proud institution. And I had some really wonderful conversations with, I was in the 1940s room with alumni from the 1940s who talked about having to milk the cows before going to work, before going to school. So when my kids complain about not using the dishwasher now, I milk cows. So, but it was great, and it was great to see all the yearbooks and attendance sheets and absence slips, and it was really fun. And thank you for putting it all together.
Thank you. Yes.
I just want to mention I had a great time at the Saturday and Saturday night. And Sunday afternoon, we also, a few of us attended the dance at Kate Walton Fieldhouse, dancing over the decades, which Anna Brett and Leslie Carr, they did their thing out there. They were wonderful. And thank you to Maureen Bowers for putting that all together. It was great. Thank you.
I was just going to also thank you, Nora, and everyone else. I felt real, as an alumni of Kingston High School and having the opportunity to serve on the board, I felt a real sense of community, and there was a lot of pride in our community, and I feel like that's something that needs to hopefully continue and help reinforce the reason why we, have those golden shovels, and it's because, and continue to, the new building is for our community, and as also the KTF ad says, that new buildings and, that old building support who we are. So thank you to everybody.
And I do want to thank Mrs. Bowers, because she arranged through the Center for Creative Education for Drew Andrews to be there and lead the lessons in the dances of the decades. And we had a small, maybe 50 to 75 people, but enthusiastic crowd of all ages. They were like a year and a half all the way up to one graduate of the class of 1942, who I had a long conversation with. So it was a lovely event, and I did get some video on my telephone. We'll see what Ms. Heidecker can do with that. So. Any other new business? Board member announcements. Dr. Jacobowitz.
I would just like to, everyone, just to recognize that something that we also passed tonight that kind of didn't take mention was that Mr. Shaughnessy was elected to the Ulster-BOCES school board, Ulster-BOCES board as an at-large member, and so I just wanted to extend my congratulations. Congratulations. And we know you'll be thinking of Kingston on the board.
Yes, thank you. We have there are 7 other boards that have to vote also. So today, I think they vote today. They all vote today.
Any other board member announcements?
Can I? Coffee and Conversations tomorrow morning. Hudson Coffee Service with Mr. Shaughnessy and Ms. Scheer.
Yes, I have that on my...
And Dr. Paolino.
At 8:30.
At 8:30 in the morning.
I should be awakened at 6:30 with a 2-hour...
Lead time.
2-hour notice.
I also need a volunteer for Tuesday, May 5th at 7:30 at the Quick Check in Albany Avenue.
won't do that.
Don't all speak at once.
I will tentatively volunteer. Let me just, I can check my work schedule, make sure I don't have a late night the night before.
And I've already signed up for the 19th. All set. Okay. Any other board member announcements?
I have one more.
Okay. Yes. One.
I was told by a colleague on my way to the meeting leaving work that the Kingston counseling team, in addition, and along with adolescent partial hospitalization, Bendington Hospital are having a joint fundraiser together on Sunday, June 7th. It's a kickball tournament. So I was asked to spread that word. It's nice to see the high school and the partial hospitalization program at Health Alliance working together. Hopefully I can get a good turnout. A lot of people like to play kickball, so I think that Kate's going to put something on the website, but I was just got a text on my way here asking to bring it up. So
Thank you. Any other board member announcements? No? Okay, we've reached the second public participation. So if anyone would like to address the board at this point, please come forward to the microphone.
I'm still Diana Custer, and I asked the principal of the school, Julie Linton, when I came in to make a nice public service announcement to all the people that were in attendance, as well as the board and administrators. But I was very concerned when I pulled up that the entire parking fire lane was filled with cars. And I'm just bringing to your attention that I believe the fire lanes, not just during the day, but also at nighttime, are supposed to be left clear so that if a fire truck needed to get to be able to save this building of Bailey that houses lots of children and currently houses us would be acknowledged. So I don't know who the people are. I just would like to just ask people when they come to any of the 10 schools that are currently in existence, if it is possible to please honor the fire lanes of our schools. I am still concerned about the safety and well-being of all our children in the 10 buildings. And I hope, and I want to thank, because it looks like in the budget that there has been some type of increase to the safety measures. I want to thank the high school for doing an emergency evacuation to the YMCA. I hope that we will continue to have a real understanding so that the parents aren't surprised about the emergency evacuations of all 10 of our schools and where they go in the case of an emergency. But I just want you to know that safety is not just physical, it's emotional as well. And truly the advocacy of the parents that are here and that have spoken, regardless of the issues, whether we agree or disagree about the facts. I hope that the social workers that are hired, there's enough of them to try to meet the safety and emotional needs of the children of our district. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Kester. Anyone else? Mrs. Dexter.
Hi, I just wanted to thank you for your addition of the extra staff to the consultant program. I would like to issue the second Dexter Open Door invitation. I am privileged to work with a wonderful team, Allison Taylor, Patty Guido, and myself, in a integrated class with 24 kids. We've been with them for 2 years now. And we would love to have you come see the amazing things that those kids learn from each other. It's the first time in my career I can actually say that I feel really good about the fact that we are meeting the needs of the children, and I didn't have to sit in any meeting and ask for services and have somebody leave the classroom. We're bringing that to them in the classroom. It is an incredible, wonderful program. It's something I would love to have you come in and see, and the kids would love to show you how our team works together. So anytime you're near JFK, come stop by and see, and the kids will take you through and tell you how they work together to learn as a team. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Dexter. Anyone else? Anyone else would like to address the board? Mr. Billen, you want to address the board? No. Okay. All right. We have got to, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn to executive session. For the purpose of discussing employment of certain individual or corporation, so.
So moved.
Second. Okay. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay. We're going to convene 5 minutes, please, in room 200.
You want this, man? You can have it. Okay.
Excuse me? No, none of the counselors other than Kevin, because he was an alumni. That's why he was speaking. He was 1973 graduate.
He missed to speak. He called and said, can I come? Oh, yeah, it's very nice.
We don't anticipate any.
Oh, no, I'm sorry.
Well, we were happy to have him there.
We don't anticipate any action coming out of executive session. Just so you know. No. We do not anticipate any action coming out of executive session.
Well, that's where I get my reputation as a numbers person, I guess.
I know, it's very useful. Whenever we need to proceed quickly on the ball,
What I looked at when it came to my attention that board policy as far as the trip, I was prepared, can the kids still go? And when I looked and saw we had 18